Okay, awesome. So I'm going to flip this around and give it to our presenter, who's going to be talking about the benefits cliff. And we'll have to just share screen too. So, okay, share screen. And now if the screen doesn't change pages, let me know, okay? So you're talking about everybody.
All right. I'm excited to be here. Hello to everyone.
Hi. Hello.
Hey. It's good to be out of my office and off campus for a while. My name is Kathie Miller. I am the BSW program director at Southeast Missouri State for the social work program, and excited to be here with you all this evening. But I have to start out with a really important disclaimer. I don't consider myself an expert in economy and economism. I am an expert at social work. So I'm going to talk about the benefits cliff kind of from that social work perspective. If you have a lot of questions about how all the math is done and how the economists figure out all of this stuff, I have some links at the end for you to look at, and you can see what you can figure out. But I think that talking about the benefits cliff is probably more connected to what happens to the people that are involved than all of the math that goes on behind it. So at any point in time, if anybody has a question, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'm going to go through some things with you all this evening and see if we can maybe figure out what you all need to know about the benefits cliff. If I can get this to change, maybe. So our agenda for this evening is, and being an instructor, we always have to have an agenda so the students can see how long this is going to take, because that's what they want to know. But in order to get started talking about this, I felt like it was kind of important to put some perspective to what I'm going to talk about and how I'm going to frame this. And in order to do that, you really have to look at why we have a benefits cliff to talk about at all. So in getting started with that this evening, I want to talk a little bit about what we all think about why people are poor in America, how we respond to poverty as a society, what are some of the social welfare programs we have created to respond to people's needs, and how do these social welfare programs help people become unpoor? Grammarly told me unpoor was not a word, but I wanted to use that word anyway. So bear with me. I feel like it's important when you start to think about the benefits cliff to realize that we created social welfare programs with a purpose. And I think that at least we thought it was to help people become capable to be self-sufficient and to not be living in poverty. I'm not really sure that's what it does. So talking through this, I've decided the word unpoor fit better there. So bear with me on that. And then what does the benefits cliff look like? And I'm hoping if the technology works to maybe give some examples that you guys can kind of look at and see how that benefits cliff affects specific situations with clients that we work with. So my first question for all of you, and please feel free to jump in and say anything that you'd like. Why are people poor? What are the things that are going on that create poverty or create people who are poor? And I kind of broke this into a couple of different categories. First of all, those personal issues. And I want you to know this is not, these are not my words. These are words from people that you have conversations with when you're out in the public and people are having discussions about poor people and poverty. Here are some of the things that I have heard and some of the things my students have heard. They shared some of this with me. Sometimes people are just born into poverty and that's just the way it is. They live in poverty and so they're always going to be poor. A lot of people think that we have people who live in poverty because they're lazy. They're unmotivated. They don't follow through. They're not geared toward getting anything done. Some people think that people are poor because they're not educated or they don't have any training, or maybe they don't want to be educated. They've chosen not to be educated. A lot of people out there in the world think that we have poor people because of drugs and alcohol, and people get involved in drugs and alcohol and then they're not able to earn a decent wage and take care of themselves. Some people gave us the idea that mental health is an issue, that a lot of people are struggling with mental health and mental health illnesses that are causing them to not be able to function in our society. Therefore, they become poor and they stay poor. Some people become poor because of physical health. Once someone is disabled, there are a lot of things that get in the way of their being able to have a livable wage. A lot of times you will hear people refer to the idea that many of us are just one paycheck away from being in poverty ourselves. And so a lot of times that has to do with physical health and physical disabilities. And then there are some people out there that think people are poor just because they're just bad people. And sometimes bad people do bad things and they end up in bad situations. I would like to suggest that there are also some societal issues that have to do with that, and that we can't just look at the individual people and try to figure out why people are poor. There are a lot of things that go on in society that also cause issues. First of all, there's a stigma, and there's a lot of discrimination with people who are living in poverty and trying to make ends meet. Second of all, there are a lot of barriers to advancement. And when you stop and think about it, there are many things that happen for a lot of people that keep them from being able to move ahead in a career or to maintain a stable employment. The whole entire idea of capitalism, which is a part of what our culture is based on, says that there's a supply and demand chain, and as long as that's in balance, everybody should be doing well. Unfortunately, when it's not in balance, which is frequently the case with capitalism, somebody has to be poor. Somebody has to be at the bottom of the barrel. And so poverty sometimes shakes out as a part of our sociological structure as a culture and as a country. Social capital, that whole idea that many of us have the luxury of drawing on the social capital that we have from our parents, from our ancestors, from our education, from our experiences, from our ability to travel and be a part of the world, that we actually create enough capital that we're capable of keeping ourselves out of poverty, and we're capable of being above that poverty line. Many times people who are living in poverty don't have access to those resources. They don't have those connections. They don't have that history. And so their social capital is kind of zero, and it makes it next to impossible for them to be able to get ahead. Obviously, we have some social welfare programs that many people will say to us maybe keep people in poverty rather than helping them to get out, which is one of the things that comes into play when we talk about the benefits cliff. So we'll get to that in a little bit. And then just the whole idea of access to resources to meet their needs. Especially living in rural Southeast Missouri, we know that there are a lot of people who don't have access to just basic things that they might need simply because they don't have transportation, or they don't have connections during the hours when services are available for them to get to those services. So there are a lot of societal, structural, cultural issues that play into that idea of why people are poor. And I'm going to stop for a second and just say, does anybody have anything you'd want to add to that list about how people are perceived in poverty? Yes, go ahead.
I would say being poor is a mindset.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is that there are lots of poor people that win the lottery and they have lots and lots of money. And shortly after that, they have no more
They have no money.
and they're poor again.
So it may be a behavioral.
Whereas there's been times when I have made very little money. I mean, during a short period of time, I made like $30 a month and lived on it. Okay. But I was never poor.
You were never poor.
I was never poor.
So that mindset, that's an excellent way of talking about that mindset. And I thought you were going to go with the other side of that too, to say there are many people who live with almost nothing, but they don't see themselves as poor.
Right. Well,
They have that. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Any other thoughts from anybody else?
Yeah, I got a comment.
Sure, please.
I kind of flip it on its head. Why are some people rich? I mean, I think it's because of, in some cases it's hard work, and in some cases it's luck. But I mean, there's no one answer to why people are in the situation there are. But I agree with what you said earlier, that a lot of people are living one medical emergency from being in the poorhouse too, because it's just,
Yes.
there's so many things that can come up in these days that you don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. And I love your question, why are people rich? Because for a lot of reasons, they're rich for the reasons that keep other people poor. So yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Any other thoughts before we move on?
Well, I believe that your list is very good and totally comprehensive, and I agree with it completely. Born into poverty is where I focus, and I'd like to say that it's also a family tradition. Isn't just about being born into poverty. It becomes a tradition, almost something to be celebrated, and that's one of the reasons that it's difficult to break out of.
Good, excellent insight. Thank you. So my next slide then has to do with, so what do we do with that? How do we respond to poverty as a society? And again, I kind of asked some of my students to kind of give me some ideas. And so their first thought was, I think, to ignore it. I think a lot of times students want to just ignore a lot of things anymore, but just ignore it, just pretend like it doesn't exist. One of my students talked about the idea that we try to make it go away, and talked about how in her hometown, there's one side of the tracks and that's where all the poor people are, and you never go down there. So then you don't have to know that people are poor. And we just try to put it behind us, try to put it out of our sight and not to think about it. Some of us do what we can to help those poor souls. We're sorry for them. We feel bad for them. We want them to be taken care of, but we don't want them to be taken care of out of poverty. We want them to still be poor. Sometimes we blame those people and say those people bring that on themselves. Sometimes we want to create government programs so that we can help people to get out of poverty. That always involves tax dollars. So then that becomes the two-sided coin of how we're going to spend those dollars and what's the wisest way to make that happen. And then a lot of us in our culture like to be able to donate from our excess to meet the basic needs of people who are in poverty. So those are just some of the ways that I thought of and some of my students came up with as to how we respond to poverty in our society. Any other thoughts from anybody else?
I guess going back to mine.
Yes.
Hopefully, help people to change their mindset.
Yes. If we could change the way people think, we might be able to change a lot of things. Excellent. Excellent. Any other thoughts about how we respond? All right, well, we'll move on. So I listed then some of the social welfare programs, some of the prominent ones that we see in our society, we hear a lot about, and maybe have some impact on some of the people that you all serve and work with in your program. And just to kind of look at that list and just very briefly, any questions or thoughts about how those programs are structured, what their eligibility requirements are, what they are, if you're not familiar with them. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but I do want to bring to the forefront the idea that there are a lot of social welfare programs and they're all very different in what they do and how they serve people. Any on those lists that you have a specific interest in talking about?
What is TANF?
Oh, good. Thank you. We have that question twice. So TANF is actually, you'll hear people refer to that as TANF, and it stands for Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. It's what most people would refer to as a welfare check. It used to be called Aid to Families with Dependent Children. It's the check that a parent gets for parenting children. It's an actual cash program. Up until 1996, it was known as Aid to Families for Dependent Children. In 1996, when we changed the focus of the welfare program to be more of a welfare to work program, it became Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. So that's that benefit that typically the person who's receiving it is a mom, and she receives benefits for herself and for her children. Her benefits, or the parents' benefits, are limited. Since 1996, we've said that moms need to, or the parent in that situation needs to be out in the workforce. So there's a work requirement that goes with that. If they don't meet that work requirement, then they're not eligible for the benefit. They only get it for their children. Typically when people are on TANF, they're also receiving food stamps or SNAP, and they're also receiving Medicaid as a healthcare coverage for them and their kids. Does that help a little bit? Anything else you want to know about TANF?
No, that answers it. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on that list that you have a question about? Section 8. Oh my goodness, one of my favorite things. So housing assistance in our country comes mostly through federal legislation that comes out of Washington, D.C. through the Housing and Urban Affairs Office. So they're the people that set the policy and create the programs. Section 8 is a specific kind of housing assistance wherein a landlord signs up to be a Section 8 landlord, and then people apply to be Section 8 approved. And if I am approved for a Section 8 voucher and you're my landlord, then my voucher goes to you to pay my rent to you so that I can live in your rental property. Now, if I have income, which hopefully I do, that's the idea, is this is a temporary program. If I have income, then my rent is prorated over how much I make. So let's say you're going to rent me the property for $600 a month. And I make enough that Section 8 housing has decided I can afford to pay $300. So then you're going to get $300 from me and $300 from Section 8 to cover my rent every month. Section 8 is a very elusive kind of program in that, first of all, we don't have a lot of landlords who want to participate because there are guidelines. They have to have properties that meet certain guidelines in order to be in the program. And then second of all, because the vouchers have a limit, there's like you can't charge me $2,000 a month for a house. So there's a limit to that. So there's not a lot of affordable housing that fits under the Section 8 guidelines. So one of the examples that we're going to look at later, it says something about waiting 20 years to get a Section 8 voucher. That's not unrealistic. I've never seen anybody wait quite that long, but 5, 6, 7 years is not out of the question to be on the waiting list to be able to be approved to receive the voucher. So it's a program that while it has some really good qualities as far as being able to help people, it's really not very available. And around here in Southeast Missouri, it's really not very available. Does that sort of that's just a really brief overview of what Section 8 looks like. Yeah. Any of the rest of those? Anybody know the difference between Medicaid and Medicare?
One's for the elderly, one's for the poor.
Okay, so Medicare is in the terms of a good social worky class, and I wear them out with this on tests. Medicare is an entitlement program. People are entitled to Medicare because they have paid into the system to get that benefit. So people are entitled. It's not something that you have to be eligible for financially. You're automatically eligible to get Medicare based on either being disabled or being elderly or blind or a railroad veteran. Those are the things that are covered under Medicare. So Medicare is an entitlement program, and once you get a Medicare card, you have some limited healthcare coverage. You can then purchase more healthcare coverage, Medicare Part B and C and D and all of that kind of stuff that you actually purchase over and above that basic Medicare A, which is a hospital coverage insurance program, because you're entitled to it. Medicaid, as you said, is a needs-based program. Medicaid requires that you have to meet certain income requirements. And while Medicaid comes to us from the federal government, it is federal legislation, states administer the program. So every state has different guidelines for how you're eligible for Medicaid. Medicaid is what most of the people we serve who live in poverty are getting for their health care benefit. But the guidelines in Illinois, the guidelines in Missouri, they're all very different. There's not similarity because every state gets to decide how they're going to run that program. Women, infants, and children, the WIC program is also a needs-based program, but the need is set very high. It's set at the middle class level rather than at the poverty line, so that people can have access to healthy, nutritious food and educational programs related to parenting kids in a healthy way from the time a woman is pregnant until the time that the child turns 7. The family is eligible for that program, and they get vouchers to buy nutritious foods for their family so that they'll have that to eat.
Is it true you have to register for Medicare at a certain age?
You know, when you turn 65, you are required to register yourself for Medicare Part A. The rest of it, you don't have to do anything with, but when you turn 65, you have to register for Medicare. Or
That's what I hear. Is that
or-
it's a real pain because nobody wants the Part A and the Part B, but you can't elect out. But to Alan's
So
point,
Part
just
Part A is free. So you don't have to pay for that, but if you get Part B, then you're looking at a significant amount of money every month that you pay for the Part B, which most people do at the same time. But Medicare, if you don't sign up for it, then you get a penalty, and you pay that penalty like for the rest of your life. You pay the penalty for not signing up for Medicare Part A. But you don't have to sign up for any of the other levels of Medicare unless you choose to do that. You have open windows for the rest of your life when you can go in and sign up for Medicare B or C or D or one of those other programs if you choose to do that.
But you don't pay the penalty until you sign up. It's not like you pay a penalty
Right.
if you don't sign up. You pay a
Right.
penalty if you sign up later.
Yes, exactly. And then you pay that penalty once you sign up for the Medicare Part A. Yes.
oh, so you can forego it for the rest of your life?
You
And not
could,
pay the penalty?
you could, and you'd never pay the penalty because you only pay it when you're on the Medicare. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Now, if you, I'm not sure about this because this changes frequently, but if you then elect to draw your Social Security benefit, you may be penalized at that point in time if you're not also getting that Medicare, if you're over 65.
So like, what if you're 66 and you just have a job with insurance?
So there are windows of opportunity, and there are things that you can do with Medicare Part B, C, D, and all of that stuff. But the Medicare A, you're supposed to sign up for it, just so that you're on the list, so that they know you're there. All right, so moving on, I have some other social welfare programs here: earned income tax credit, VOC rehab, job training, public education, reduced lunch, breakfast, drug alcohol treatment programs, energy assistance. Those are all also programs that impact what we're going to be talking about with the benefits cliff. And just having that idea that these are all programs where you have eligibility requirements. There are certain things you have to do to participate. There are certain things that are entitled, like public education is an entitlement. Everybody has a right to that in our country. But most of the rest of those do have guidelines, and only certain people are eligible for those programs, which becomes a piece of understanding the benefits cliff. Okay, and so just some of the things about how the programs work. There are eligibility guidelines. Some of them are needs-based, some are entitlement programs. Most of them are time limited. You don't get on that program and stay on it forever, except maybe Medicare and Social Security once you get there. There are definitely participation requirements. There are things that you have to do to stay on the program. And if you don't do those things, a lot of times you get taken off the program. And that becomes a huge issue for a lot of the people that we work with, is that they miss a deadline, they miss a guideline, they forget to turn something in. They don't report that they have new people in their house or those kinds of things. And it really impacts their ability to have those social welfare programs work for them. And then almost all of them are monitored at some level by some state or federal agency. There's always some check-in with the people that are on the programs to assure that they are eligible and that they're maintaining the paperwork and the requirements to be on the program. So then I've just given you kind of a list, a definition of what poverty is: the state of one who lacks a usual or socially acceptable amount of money or material possessions. Poverty is said to exist when people lack the means to satisfy their basic needs. In this context, the identification of poor people first requires a determination of what contributes to a basic need. These may be defined as narrowly as the necessary things for survival, or as broadly as those reflecting the prevailing standard of living in the community. So just keeping in mind what poverty is, it's something to do with the lack of basic needs. But then you have to think about who defines what those basic needs are, and then define whether we're talking about actual basic needs in the bare minimum, or are we talking about a certain standard of living when we talk about poverty. And that's kind of important in looking at the benefits cliff and what that means to the people that we're working with. Poverty can be looked at as absolute poverty, which is the federal government sets a guideline. Here's the line. If you live above it, you're not in poverty. If you live below it, you are in poverty. I looked this up today just to look at what the numbers are right now. The federal poverty guideline for 2023 says that if you're a family of 4 and you make $30,000, then you're not poor. If you're under $30,000, then you are poor. So, and that's prorated for the number of people in every family. So relative poverty has to do with looking at your ability to earn and support your family based on what everybody else in your community or the rest of your local population are able to do. So it compares your income and your ability to meet your needs to the other people around you. And then we talk about worthy poor and unworthy poor, people that we want to help and people that we don't want to help. Just to kind of, again, put that into perspective as we look at that benefits cliff. So how do poor people become unpoor? In our culture, we very much live on this American dream. If you dream it, if you have enough desire, if you have enough motivation, you will make it, and you're going to be able to be whatever you want to be and do whatever you want to do. And sometimes that works for some people, and sometimes it doesn't work very well. We definitely live in a culture that very much values this idea of if you work hard, then you'll get ahead. And the harder you work, the more you're going to get ahead. The more you organize yourself and come up with goals and work toward those goals and are determined, you'll make it. You hear a lot of people, my generation people, my students don't know what this means at all, but I say, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, get up there, get out there, do whatever you can to make things better for yourself. We tell a lot of people to never give up, that never giving up will mean you're going to get out of this mess and things will be better. Be more responsible, take on responsibilities, get organized, get your time managed appropriately. And then sometimes people get unpoor by temporarily using our social welfare programs until they're able to make it on their own. And the vast majority of the social welfare programs that we use in our country are kind of based on that philosophy that we want to help you temporarily to get up and out of poverty, but we don't want to necessarily help you for forever unless you're one of those worthy poor people that has, you know, maybe a disability and you're not able to work or whatever. But we really focus most of our social welfare on this idea of temporarily assisting people with the expectation that eventually they're going to be able to take care of themselves. Any thoughts about any of my unpoor statements there?
Winning the lottery doesn't count?
Winning the lottery, I didn't put that on there because I saw that it was like 1 in a 272 million chance, and
Besides, they all end up poor.
and it doesn't seem to work for everybody, right?
Yeah, they got a lot of money, but they end up.
But it's
poor.
gone. It's just gone. Yeah.
It disappears.
Poorly managed for sure. Yes. So here we are to what it is you all want to know something about. What is a benefits cliff? So this definition comes from the National Conference of State Legislatures, and I thought it was probably the best one to kind of put this into perspective. The benefits cliff refers to the sudden and often unexpected decrease in public benefits that can occur with a small increase in earnings. This happens when families receive benefits through a public assistance program, earn a raise, and then become ineligible to continue receiving benefits despite being unable to sustain their household. Sometimes the cliff effect looks more like a slope or a plateau. When lost benefits outpace a wage increase, many families park or fall off the cliff's edge, stalling the progression in their jobs and careers. So what does all of that really mean? So technically what the benefits cliff refers to is the idea that because most of the programs that we provide to our clients are temporary and they are needs-based, we have guidelines for how long you can be on the program, for what you can receive on the program, and we have cutoffs that say, if you get to this level of income, then you're no longer eligible for the program. That's what creates this idea of a benefits cliff. A lot of times people will look at the situation that they're in and say, if I get a job, then I'll have more money coming in, but then I'm going to lose my TANF benefit. And if I lose TANF, then I lose my Medicaid, so I don't have health insurance. And if I lose TANF and Medicaid, I'm also going to lose the food stamps, and then I won't have these benefits. I'll just have an income. And if that income is enough to support all of those things for the family, then there's not a benefits cliff. But if it's not enough to support them, then they either plateau where they can't make enough to get ahead, or it goes down a slope and they slowly sink into worse poverty than they were in, or with the benefits cliff, they just fall off the cliff because the services are gone and they are now living at a much lower level, even though they may have taken a job that gives them money and income. Does that sort of kind of?
We're gonna talk about economics.
Well, that's as good
economics.
that's as good as I can do. I can talk about it from the social work perspective, but looking at, and I've given you some examples and some resources at the end here, and I'll make sure that you have a copy of this if you need it.
Economics is the study of how people
Yes.
react to money.
At money, what they do with that, yes.
That's all it is.
And
They make decisions.
and they make
based on all
decisions.
these different things.
And hopefully in thinking about the benefits cliff, you realize that sometimes the dilemma that we put people in to make those decisions is really very difficult, because if I am not working, say I'm a mom, I'm getting TANF, and my two kids and I have that income, which isn't very much, but I probably am getting a voucher for some housing, and I may have my food stamps coming in, and I've got Medicaid cards to cover our medical expenses. And then I get a job working at McDonald's 20 hours a week, making $13 an hour, which sounds like a really good move in the right direction for me to be moving towards self-sufficiency. But the research, the economic research about this says that in our culture right now, the big cutoff, the big drop off is frequently in that area between $13 and $17 an hour of pay, that I frequently will become ineligible within that frame. I will become ineligible for all of these programs that are supporting me. So I give up my TANF, which is my check or my income, my money that comes to me, which might not be that big of a deal because I'm maybe getting $700 a month, and I can maybe make more at my job now that I'm getting $13 an hour, working 20 hours a week or whatever. So that's kind of a trade-off that works. But I've been getting $400 a month in food stamps, and I'm going to lose them. They're going to be gone. And then I'm going to lose my Medicaid card because I'm not on TANF. Now, I might be able to go ahead and get Medicaid for my kids because we have a program that says we're going to try to give healthcare to kids that comes out of the Affordable Care Act from 2010. So I might be able to keep them on Medicaid, but I probably am going to lose it for me, and McDonald's isn't giving me a health benefit. So now I have no way to pay for my health care. And so it doesn't take long for me to look at this picture and say, it might just be better if I wasn't working because I still have more stability that way. My life is stable. My kids have what they need. They have a mom who's there with them. And oh, by the way, if I go to work, I'm going to have childcare, and that's going to cost a lot. And I may be eligible for a subsidy, at least for now, but it doesn't take very much, about a dollar an hour increase in my pay, and then I lose that benefit too. And so then I am stuck actually deeper in the hole financially than I was whenever I was at home taking care of my kids and drawing the TANF benefits and SNAP and my Medicaid card. So that's really what the benefits cliff in a nutshell is saying to us, is the issue and the concern. I'm gonna try, maybe if we're really lucky, to give you some things to consider. Things like if you get a raise, you get more hours, you get another job or maybe a new job. While all of those things sound really good to us, they may not make the household better off if they are receiving public assistance and social welfare program benefits. Almost all of those programs that we looked at earlier have limits other than public education and the Medicare and Social Security. Those are entitlement programs. You get them no matter what your income is. But all of the rest of those programs have cutoffs. So there are times when getting a raise, taking a job as a supervisor, moving ahead in my field, taking on more hours, getting another job so I'm working 2 jobs instead of 1, or getting a new job that maybe pays a little more than the one I had. While all of those things sound like good ideas for us, for a lot of the people that we work with, they're not good ideas. They have to really weigh out, is the benefit going to actually be there, or am I going to fall off that cliff and be in a worse situation? The other thing that a lot of the research and a lot of the economists are now looking at with this, because this has become a really kind of hot button community planning kind of issue, is that this not only impacts the families that we're talking about and the people who are drawing public assistance, but it also impacts the workforce. We have a lot of businesses, a lot of agencies out there, as I'm sure you all know, who are begging for workers, and they can't get people to come work for them. Number one, because many people are already employed. And number two, because people who aren't employed don't want to take on a job that's not going to offer them the benefits that will cover all of these things that they have. So we have a lot of employers now who are really starting to partner with social welfare agencies to look at what are some things that could happen between the employers and the social welfare programs that might indeed enhance and improve situations for both of them. So you have a lot of employers now that are looking at offering people much more flexible work hours. So if you come in and say to me, if I work 25 hours a week, I'm going to lose my food stamps, I might say, well, then we'll never schedule you for more than 23 hours a week so that you can keep that benefit. And a lot of employers are now looking at that and saying this might be the way to go to be able to cover the shifts that we need to cover for our usually lower income kind of jobs. The other thing that I thought about here that's really kind of important is that if you look at what the research says about that window between $13 and $17, and if I'm making $13 and then all of a sudden I'm making $13.50, I'm probably losing benefits because of that. If you think about that, one of the other reasons that this has become such a big community issue now is because we have worked very hard to raise the minimum wage. And so now in the state of Missouri, we're up there at what, $12 or something is our minimum wage. So we're putting people, because we're trying to pay them more, we're putting them into situations where they may be living on much less in the long run. So communities, employers, the workforce, social welfare programs are trying to come together and try to look at that, because this results in making some really difficult decisions for families and employers and for policymakers. It's a tough thing for everybody to try to consider what we need to do with
I
that.
think there was one thing that you left off of it.
I can't imagine that, but go ahead, put it on there for me.
That's the, go to the black market.
Yes,
Selling
yes,
drugs,
yes.
stealing,
You bet.
whatever.
You bet. We set
It's-
people
it's
up for that.
Because they can do that and still get all those benefits.
Yes, and no one knows about that income. You're exactly right. And in a lot of ways, we're fostering those kinds of behavior in a very real kind of way for a lot of people.
Sure.
Yeah, it makes
Because
it
it makes sense to do that.
exactly. And in most of their minds, it's a little bit easier than going to work every day and having to get up and get the kids ready and get dressed and all those other things you do to get to an actual job. You're exactly right. I'll add that to my PowerPoint. I'll put that in
It's
there.
something to consider.
It is. It's a very important piece of all of this, and because it really does set a tone for how we look at what we're going to do with this, for sure. All right, so I've given you a couple of examples, and I'll just kind of go through this. This is a quote from a lady, Laura Sylvester at the Food Bank of Massachusetts, presents a common Cliff scenario. Let's say that somebody is working as a daycare provider and earning Massachusetts minimum wage of $13.50 an hour. They get some SNAP benefits and they are in Section 8 housing, which is a federal housing subsidy. You often have to wait 20 or more years before you're approved. The waiting list is so long because of the incredible lack of affordable housing. Say that daycare provider gets offered a promotion to become a supervisor and is given $1.50 an hour raise. That tiny little income bump puts them over the eligibility for SNAP, so they're going to lose all their SNAP benefits. And it maybe puts them over the edge for housing, which nobody wants to lose, because what happens if you take that raise and then get laid off 3 months later? You're out of luck and back on the wait list, and you can be so much worse off than before. That's a really nice description of what the benefits cliff looks like in working with families out there in the community. So we're going to try this. We'll see what happens. How's that? See if I can get it to. Maybe, maybe let the mouse in here. Or maybe not. We've got to do this.
When you do the right click, there's not an open clicker link. No, not with yours.
Sometimes it works, sometimes.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not.
Do a copy paste,
Gotcha.
Let's see if it'll-
and copy and then paste it into,
not that big of a deal, but well. And I tell you what, I just won't do that. I don't want to mess up your stuff here. Are you sure?
Yeah, sure, just click on the Google font, or the font at the bottom. And then hopefully we'll see it, see it coming. And then go to.
All right, let's see. After all of this, hopefully we'll have a couple of examples here. All right, so this one is meet Samantha. Samantha is a 24-year-old single mom with 3 kids, and I'm hoping that yeah, no, it's not gonna. I mean, there we go. Now. Here, there we go. So, meet Samantha. She's 24 years old. She's a single mom with 3 kids. She's a department manager at a local retail store, making $28 an hour, which sounds like a pretty good job to me. Bringing in $4,872 monthly before taxes. Samantha's budget is tight, but fortunately she qualifies for child care assistance. So she's getting $1,281 a month in child care assistance. Oh, yes. Yes.
We're still seeing the PowerPoint on the Zoom.
Oh, okay, hang on, just a minute.
That's 58,340 annually.
Yeah.
Holy cow. If you do a share screen, it should let her bounce back and forth.
Fine,
Really? What kind of computer do you have?
one that needs to be
I was
updated.
gonna say it.
Okay, now it's new changed.
That works.
Now I see it.
See Samantha.
Okay. All right. You can see Samantha. Good. All right. So here's Samantha's situation. Samantha has performed well at her job and her employer gives yearly merit pay increases. This year, her hourly wage will increase to $29 an hour. So it's going up by a dollar an hour. But there's a catch. With a pay increase of just $174 per month, Samantha no longer qualifies for child care assistance. So she loses the $1,281 per month of her income. Samantha's family is now at risk of financial crisis. Her pay increase has resulted in a net loss of $1,107 per month. So that's a definition of how the benefits cliff works. Now we'll see if we're really lucky. Maybe we can.
Yeah, I have a question. about
Sure.
that. Samantha doesn't know about the benefits plus. He says, that sounds good. I want another $1 an hour.
Yeah.
Well, and then she's like, whoa, and then she discovers on the back end that this happened.
Yes.
What's the,
So
what does that look like on the back end?
So that's what we're trying to hopefully affect. And one of the last things I'm going to show you is this tool where people can actually go in and look at that and go, what are my benefits going to look like if I take this job? Or
But let's say that she actually does do that, not knowing.
so what typically happens, and obviously Samantha's making a lot more money, but we're talking people like in Massachusetts and Maine, where that's probably not a lot of money. But a real life family, I mean, I could take you to a Samantha down the road here, not too far, and say, here's what happens. They take the job because they're excited about that. And you know that excitement you get. They think I'm doing a good job. They're going to give me more money. I'm making $29 an hour. And then you take the job. And then after a couple of 3 months, you realize you don't have enough money to pay the rent. You don't have enough money to buy shoes for the kids. And things start to fall apart. And then you start not doing a really good job at your job. And now there's a little bit of pressure there. And you start feeling concerned about that. And the money gets tighter and tighter. And you think, should I take another job so I can make up this difference? Do I put my kids in a cheaper childcare where they may not be safe? Do I ask grandma to watch them? And you start to come up with ways to paste things back together. And a lot of times the person doesn't even really realize that it's because of your raise that you lost this. And then eventually some tragedy will happen, some trauma, the water heater will burst and there won't be a way to pay it, or something like that will happen. And then that person ends up losing that job they're making the $29 at. And then they're down at the bottom and looking for resources and looking for programs they could be eligible for. So that frequently that drop takes them even further.
Let's say though that they go back to their employer and say, you know what, I can't take this $29 an hour raise. I'll leave the position. Can I get $28?
Yeah.
So let's say that happens. But what happens with the benefit after having done that?
So she's okay to go back and reapply. She'd have to go through the whole application process again, and then they would determine whether or not she was eligible at that level. Now, when she left the program, when she left the child care assistance, she was eligible at $28 an hour. If the guidelines haven't changed, if we haven't had a change from the federal government or the state government in how we do child care subsidy, then she's probably good to go back to $28. And if her employer will work with her, he'd probably say, hey, I'll give you $27 an hour and and so you can have your benefit. So she would still be eligible to go apply. And as long as the benefits didn't change, she would probably be reinstated on that program. Good question. All right, so the next one we're going to look at very quickly is Jeremiah. Jeremiah is a 19-year-old single adult with no kids. Jeremiah works at an entry-level food service job making $12 an hour or $2,088 monthly before taxes. Jeremiah's budget is tight, but fortunately he qualifies for food assistance. He's getting $23 a month in food stamps or SNAP, okay, which is not unusual for a single person to have a pretty low limit. But his income is such that, according to food stamp guidelines, he should be able to afford his food. So Jeremiah has performed well at his job, and his employer decides to give him a raise and a promotion to shift leader. This year, his hourly wage increases to $13 an hour. So at $13 an hour, he has a total increase of $174 a month. But there's a catch. With a pay increase of $174 per month, Jeremiah no longer qualifies for food assistance. So he loses that $23 of SNAP benefits. However, even though Jeremiah lost his food assistance, he's still better off than he was before the raise. So he's still coming in with a net gain of $151 per month because what he lost in his benefit was less than what he gained in the raise. So he doesn't have a benefit cliff. He's done exactly what we set the program up for. He got a job, he got a promotion, he got more income, he came off the program, and he's still better off than he was before. And that's what we're hoping for with the way the programs are set up.
Until he pays child support.
Until,
3 kids.
for all those kids he's got, somebody says, hey, you're the father of this child, right? So food assistance is designed as a slope program. You can have food stamps, and if you have income, your food stamps don't just go away. They're not just taken away from you. You go down a slope until you're making more than what the guideline is for you to be able to receive according to the number of people in your family. So that slope design avoids the sudden severe loss of benefits that come with a benefit cliff. And that's kind of what we're trying to create more programs that have that slope that give people a chance to be able to come off the program, but still be able to be at least stable with the income in the family. Yes, sure.
You might want to resign the computer so that you're actually in the front end. We moved.
Oh, because I put us, oh, yeah.
The same numbers.
Let's see if we can maybe sort of.
You know, before the-
There we go. How's that? Thank you. All right. I promise we're almost finished with this. Okay, so now we're looking at Ann and Taylor, a married couple in their mid-40s with 3 kids. So together, their hourly wage is $33 an hour. So you're considering both of their incomes. The total monthly pre-tax income for their household is $5,742 per month. Their budget is tight, but fortunately they qualify for food assistance, and they're getting $353 a month in food assistance. Ann is passionate about her job and works hard. Her employer sees this and gives Ann a pay increase. This year, her hourly wage increases by $1 an hour. So now together, they're earning $34 an hour for a total increase of $174 per month. But there's a catch. With a pay increase of $174 per month, Ann and Taylor no longer qualify for food assistance, so they're losing that $353. That's completely wiped out.
Wow.
And so Ann and Taylor's family is now at risk of financial crisis. Ann's pay increase has resulted in a net loss of $179 per month for their family. So that, in a nutshell, those are some simple ideas about what the benefits cliff actually looks like whenever people are dealing with that.
I got a question.
Yes. Yes.
I thought you said it was a slope when it came to food, and all of a sudden the other guy had a slope to where it slowly decreased. This is the same thing, food assistance, but why was it a cliff at this point?
So for this family, because of the guidelines for the food stamp program, they would have lost what they were getting because of how many people are in their family and what their actual benefit was.
So the food stamp program is not a slope? I thought you said that program was a slope.
It is a slope, but the bottom line is, even on the slope, they were already sloping at their 353. They were already on a significant slope because of their income. They were already not receiving the full benefit. So their slope was a lot less. There wasn't nearly as much slope to go as the guy who was only getting $23 had.
So a 300 and whatever drop is not a cliff, it's a slope. You're saying that's part of their slope is just to lose all their benefits?
So they were probably at some point in time getting $800 or $900 a month in food stamps for a family of 5. That wouldn't be out of the question. They had already come down the slope, and their next level would have taken away their benefit.
Okay.
It's very confusing. If you think it's confusing, that's the way it is. And I look at the people who do the food stamp SNAP program, and I have great compassion for all the things they have to put up with, because it is an ever evolving, changing process for what eligibility looks like. All right, any other questions about those? I've got a couple of other examples, but I won't do that. I'll just stop and say, any questions in general? Have I made it more clear or less clear?
So this is our way to get out.
So the really, the big, let's see if I can get back to.
You've made it more clear that it's less clear.
Okay, actually, we'll need to stop screen share. Stop share.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Is this a new share?
No, I'm missing the red button
Which,
right there next to it.
oh, okay.
Stop share. Okay, and then go back to share screen.
That should be down here
At the
somewhere.
bottom. Green,
The green one, yes.
okay, and then choose your platform.
There we
There you
go.
go.
Now we're back there.
And then share. On the bottom right.
And share one more time.
Yep, yep.
All right. Now, yay, thank you. So at the end of this, and like I said, I'll send you an email copy of this. Would that
It's all
help?
recorded.
Okay, that's
Oh.
okay, good. One of the things that you have here are some of the programs that are being done in other states. North Carolina has taken kind of a lead in this. Georgia has a benefits cliff committee. Maine, Massachusetts, Missouri, we're not there yet, but hopefully that will be coming to start partnering and collaborating in communities so that we get employers and social welfare program people. One of the clips that I have here actually involves the state of Maine has decided that people who are experiencing the benefits cliff are actually a part of their planning committee to look at ways that we could either change some of the guidelines of the programs or support employers on the flip side of that, so that the cliff isn't such a cliff, and so that people can plan a little better for when it's going to happen. One of the things I wanted to show you, it probably won't let us do this either, but this thing here on this list that says cliff is actually a cliff dashboard where you can go there and you can put in, here's what I'm making now, here's what I could make, your family size, all of your expenses, and it will tell you whether or not it would be in your best favor to go ahead with that. And that's one of the things that's been created by the National Association of Legislatures to say this might be a tool that would help people to not only plan for an immediate change, but to also look at more long-term changes and to say, okay, if let's say I'm going to go to college and I want to become a nurse, and right now, here's what I've got, but by the time I get out of nursing school, here's what I could be earning. You can actually look at that long-term financial planning with that cliff dashboard and be able to see, is it to my advantage to invest the time at this point to do that, to make it so that hopefully I can be benefited by it in the long run.
So you said that Medicare was run by the states?
Medicare is federal. Medicaid is administered by states. Mhm.
So is this little tool, does it take into account that Missouri is different from Illinois?
So
For that,
if
for
you're-
anything that would be state related?
if you're getting Medicaid, you're not paying for it, so it doesn't affect your income. But if you are going down the cliff, then yes, you can actually, it requires you to put in the state that you're in. And so it actually uses the numbers for the state that you're in for that and for housing assistance. And any of those benefits like childcare assistance is different in different states. So it will automatically correct for that every time it figures your benefit for you and say, if you live in Dexter, Missouri, this is how it would impact you. Or if you live in Massachusetts or whatever, it will let you do that. Yes. It's a really kind of nifty tool to be able to just put numbers in there and say, if I had an increase of 50 cents an hour, what would that do? And would that cause me to lose any of the benefits that I currently have?
That's shinyapps.io.
Yes.
Have to download.
Yes, you can do it as an app. This is an actual website. Yeah, yeah. But it's a really helpful tool to be able to look at the short-term plan, what would it do for me right now, and then the more long-term plan. If I were to be, working at this job for the next 2 years, how long will it take me to get myself out of the hole if I ever could get myself out of the hole? It lets you plan and be able to look at that from all the different angles. Any other questions that you all might have? Well, I want to say thank you for asking me to come and get to talk and visit with some other people. I love to get out of the classroom every once in a while and see what's going on in the rest of the world. So thank you all for asking me to be here. We appreciate that and wish you the best in what you're doing. This is some tough work that you're doing, and we thank you for it.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you. Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank
This is
you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay,
You too.
Excellent.
so I've got Ray and Jeff and Ken and Antoinette and David. I will take care of your Optima stuff. So you don't have to worry about making that entry for attending this evening. And then we'll also make the recording available to the other volunteers. Hopefully they'll watch it for credit. So I will bid you all a good evening, and we're gonna have cake. So I'll see you all later.
You're the best.
All
Mark.
right, y'all have a good one. Bye-bye. Bye, Mark.
Bye-bye.